Afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday. Yom Shishi. Let's light up the darkness. Also, we say Good Moed or Moedem LaSimcha because we are in the intermediate days of Passover. And tonight, as we enter Shabbos, we enter Yom Tov, a full Chag, a full holiday again. Seventh day of Passover is a holiday, a full holiday. No were permitted. Of course, it wouldn't be anyway since it's Passover. Then in Israel, Passover will end Saturday night. But outside of Israel, we have 2 days of Chag for reasons we've discussed many times. When the calendar was set by the announcement of the new month in Jerusalem, the news couldn't travel so quickly. They didn't have an internet. And so outside of Israel, to avoid, getting it wrong, because they didn't hear in time, you would have a 2-day holiday. So the 7th day of Passover outside of Israel becomes the 7th and 8th days of Passover. So we'll have a holiday both Saturday and Sunday, finishing up Passover. We won't have class Saturday night. We won't have class Sunday night. After today, we'll meet again on Monday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Who's in the house on a Friday? Paul in the great Northwest Yehuda in South Carolina. Paul, I heard me singing. Melissa in Great Neck Guy in Ohio. Lucy in Minnesota. Joe in the Inland Empire. Gordo in Scotland. Bella in Florida. Joseph in Nevada. Bill in Mid-Missouri. Karen in Northern California, Michelle in Jupiter, Florida, Chaim in Florida, Franco in Trieste, Italy, or in the countryside, Alan in New York City, Ella in Southern California, and Liliana in Mexico. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you with us. I'm going to get right into it. I didn't really mean to do a double daf today, but we're going to get into the David and Bathsheba story, and it's kind of intense and colorful and all one piece, and so we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's get into it. We're picking this up about halfway into, not even halfway, about a third of the way into page 106a. Continuing our discussion of those who do not have a place in the world to come, the commoners mentioned in our Mishna here, Mishnah number 1 in chapter 11 of Tractate Sanhedrin, the 24th volume of the Talmud. So today we'll be doing pages 106 and 107. Balaam, so continuing the discussion of the commoners who don't have a share in the world to come, and we mentioned Balaam, the prophet Balaam, who was brought in by the king Balak in order to curse the Jewish people. God did not allow him to curse the Jewish people, so he blessed the Jewish people. But he wasn't a enthusiastic blesser, so to speak. He would have preferred to curse the Jewish people, as we learned yesterday. And eventually he did figure out how to harm the Jewish people, advising the Midianites to send young women to seduce the Jewish men and thereby tempt them into committing idolatry. Balaam said to Balak, "Behold, I go to my people," right? So the prophet Balaam said to King Balak, "Behold, I go to my people. Come therefore, and I shall advise you what this people shall do to your people." Numbers 24:24. So ostensibly, he should have said, "What your people shall do to this people." Right? In other words, Balaam was brought to advise Balak how to fight against the Jews. So he should have told them, well, this is what you guys should do. But instead he says what they will do to you. So why is this? Ostensibly he should have said what your people shall do to this people. Rabba Abba Bar Kahana says, Balaam spoke like a person who curses himself, but does not wish to utter so awful a matter, and instead ascribes his curse to take effect on others. Balaam said to them, the God of these Jewish people despises lewdness, and they desire linen garments as they have no new garments. So come, I will give you advice. Make for them enclosures using wall hangings, and seat prostitutes in them, with an old woman outside the enclosure and a young woman inside, and have the women sell them linen garments, right? This is how you're going to seduce the Jewish people to commit idolatry, and that will do much more harm against them than any, war footing. Balak made for them enclosures using wall hangings from the snow mountain, the Hermon, until Beis HaYeshimos. And he sat prostitutes in them with an old woman outside and a young woman on the inside. And at the time when Jewish people were eating and drinking and were glad and going out to stroll in the marketplace, the old woman would say to a Jew, aren't you seeking linen garments? And he would enter the enclosure and ask the price, and the old woman would quote him a price equal to its value, and the young woman would quote him a price less than its value. And this scenario would repeat itself 2 or 3 times. And thereafter she would say to him, you are like a member of our household. Sit and choose for yourself the merchandise that you want. And a jug of Ammonite wine was placed near her, and neither Ammonite wine nor Gentile wine had been prohibited yet for Jews. And she said to him, is it your wish to drink a cup of wine? And once he drank the wine, his evil inclination burned within him, right? So seduce them, bring them in, be friendly, get them drinking, and then, right, the guard against the evil inclination drops. And so then he, this, Jewish man who had been seduced in many examples, said to her, the woman seducing him, submit to me and engage in intercourse with me. And she then removed the idol that she worshipped from her lap and said to him, basically, you want to have sex with me? Worship this. Well, he said to her, am I not Jewish? I am therefore forbidden from engaging in idol worship. She said to him, and what is your concern? We are asking you to do nothing more than to defecate in its presence, right? Because this is the Baal, and this was an idol and a form of idolatry where you serve the idol by defecating in its presence. But he, right, this young man, does not know that its worship is conducted in that manner. Once he did so, she said to him, moreover, I will not leave you until you deny the Torah of Moses your teacher, as it is stated, but when they came to Baal Peor, they separated themselves to the shameful item, and they became detestable, like that which they loved. That's Hosea in 9:10, speaking many years later. So they devoted themselves to the disgrace of defecation, and thereby they detested the name of God. And with regard to the verse, and Israel dwelt in Shittim, Numbers 25:1, Rabbi Eliezer says Shittim is the name of the place. Rabbi Yehoshua says it is an allusion to the fact that they were engaged in matters of nonsense, shetut, i.e. prostitution and idol worship. And with regard to the verse, and they called Vatikrena, the people, to the offerings of their gods, Numbers 25:2, Rabbi Eliezer says naked women encountered them. Rabbi Yehoshua says they all became those who experienced a seminal emission, kerayan, resulting from the lust that they experienced. But maybe they didn't actually have the sex, according to that view. Apropos the homiletic interpretation of the names of places, the Gemara digresses and asks, what is the connotation of the term Rephidim in Exodus 19:2? Rabbi Eliezer says Rephidim is the name of the place. Rabbi Yehoshua says it is an allusion to the fact that they enfeebled, ripu, themselves with regard to engaging in matters of Torah. As it is stated, the fathers do not look back to their children from feebleness, rifyon, of hands, Jeremiah 47:3. There too, the connotation of the name is dereliction in the study of Torah. Rabbi Yochanan says, everywhere that it is stated, and he dwelt, it is nothing other than an expression of pain, of an impending calamity. As it is stated, and Israel dwelt in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. And Jacob dwelt in the land where his father had sojourned in the land of Canaan. And it is stated thereafter, and Joseph brought evil report to them to his father, which led to the sale of Joseph. And it is stated, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen. And it is stated thereafter, and the time drew near that Israel was to die, meaning Jacob. And it is stated, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, in 1 Kings 5:5. And it is stated thereafter, and the Lord raised up an adversary to Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was the king of the king. Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. Right, so we got a little digression there, but the point is that Balaam, who was not able to curse the Jewish people, did advise Balak and the Moabites and the Midianites how they could seduce these Jewish men to idolatry. And once enough of them committed idolatry, a plague broke out against the children of Israel in the wilderness. That was only finally halted when Pinchas, zealously acted on God's behalf and slew Cosbi and Zimri, as we've talked about at other times. Now, with regard to Balaam, it is stated, and they slew the kings of Midian with the rest of their slain, and Balaam, the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. Right? So it did not end well for Balaam. The Gemara asks, Balaam, what did he seek there? What was his role in that war? It wasn't his people. What was he doing there? He lived in Aram. So Rabbi Yochanan says he went to collect payment for the 24,000 members of the Jewish people whom he felled, right, in that plague which was created through his advice to the Moabites and Midianites. So Mar Zutra Bar Tuvia says that Rav says that this is in accordance with the adage that people say, a camel goes to seek horns, and the ears that it had are severed from it. Not only was Balaam unsuccessful in collecting his fee, he also lost his life. Right? Camels don't have horns. When they go seeking horns, they end up not getting the horns and losing their own ears. That's metaphorically what happened to Balaam. It is stated, and Balaam, son of Beor, the diviner, did the children of Israel slay with the sword among the rest of their slain in Joshua 13:22. So the Gemara asks, was he a diviner? Now, who are we talking about? Balaam, the diviner, or his father, Beor, the diviner? Sounds like we're talking about Balaam, right? So Balaam ben Beor, Balaam, the son of Beor, who was a diviner. Balaam, the diviner. So the Gemara asks, was he a diviner? He's a prophet. Rabbi Yochanan says initially he was a prophet, but ultimately he lost his capacity for prophecy and he remained merely a diviner. So Rav Papa says that this is in accordance with the adage that people say, this woman was descended from princes and rulers, and she was licentious with carpenters, right? Somebody of nobility who starts to fall, ends up in the gutter and fornicating with whoever. 106b. With regard to the latter part of the verse, and Balaam, the son of Beor, the diviner, did the children of Israel slay with the sword among the rest of their slain, in Joshua 13:22. About this, Rav says, it means that they accomplished in him all four means of court-imposed executions, stoning and burning, beheading, and strangulation. A certain heretic said to Rabbi Hanina, have you heard how old Balaam was when he died? So Rabbi Hanina said to him, it is not written explicitly in the Torah, but from the fact that it is written, bloody and deceitful men shall not live half their days, in Psalm 55, this indicates that he was 32 or 34 years old, less than half the standard 70-year lifespan. And the heretic said to him, you have spoken well. I myself saw the notebook of Balaam, and it was written therein, Balaam the lame was 32 years old when Pinchas the highwayman killed him. Mar, the son of Ravina, said to his son, with regard to all of those enumerated as not having a share in the world to come, the three kings and the four commoners in this Mishnah, do not extensively interpret verses homiletically in order to denigrate them, except with regard to Balaam the wicked, as any negative element that you discover in his regard, continue to interpret homiletically concerning him, as it is appropriate to attribute wickedness to one so wicked. If you can derive any further curses, insults, negative descriptions about Balaam in the text, go for it. You should find them because he was so wicked and did so much harm. Next fellow who was written in our Mishna as not having a share in the world to come is Doeg the Edomite. 1 Samuel 22:9 is where we learn about him. It is written in one verse about Doeg the Edomite. In 1 Samuel 22:9, his name is Doeg. But it is written in another verse, and the king said to Doeg in 1 Samuel 22:18. So his name is spelled differently. It's in the same chapter in 1 Samuel, but between verse 9 and verse 18, there's a spelling change in this man's name. So the question, of course, is why? Rabbi Yochanan says in explaining the discrepancy, initially the Holy One, blessed be he, sat and was concerned, Doeg, that perhaps this person would emerge to undertake an evil path, and after he emerged on that path, God said, alas, vai, which is spelled vav vav yud, that person has emerged to undertake an evil path. So this vav and yud are the difference in the spellings of the name. And the Gemara cites a mnemonic for the statements of Rabbi Yitzchak that follow: mighty, wicked, and righteous, riches, and counter. That's a mnemonic series of words to help us remember what comes now. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? Why boast of your evil mighty one, the mercy of God? Why boast of your evil, comma, mighty one? The mercy of God endures continually. In Psalm 52, verse 3. What does this mean? So the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Doeg, aren't you mighty in Torah? Why do you boast of evil? Isn't God's mercy extended over you continually when you engage in his Torah? Right, so we're going to see again, and we've seen this a few times, like with the kings who have no share in the world to come, it wasn't because they were ignorant of Torah. In fact, they were extremely well-versed in Torah. And now we're going to see about these commoners as well. This Doeg, he knew quite a bit of Torah, even though he was not a Jew. So what's going on over here? Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? But to the wicked, God says, what have you to do to declare my statutes, and that you have taken my covenant in your mouth? So that's Psalm 50, verse 16. So the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Doeg the wicked, why do you speak of my statutes and my Torah? When you reach the Torah portion of murderers and the Torah portion of slanderers, how do you teach them? For you have violated both. And with regard to the end of that verse, and that you have taken my covenant in your mouth, Rabbi Ami says Doeg's Torah is only insincere lip service, as it is in his mouth, but not in his heart. He does not have a profound understanding of the Torah and does not commit himself to the performance of its mitzvahs. Now, we talked about yesterday a very famous teaching that one who studies Torah or who performs mitzvahs, good deeds, fulfilling their obligations under Torah law, for the wrong reasons, it's fine, because ultimately he will come to perform those deeds for the right reason. Right? So, for example, we gave the example of one who gives to charity just so that other people, will honor him and respect him. But eventually he'll see how much good he's doing with the charity, and he'll come to give the charity simply because God obliges him and because it's the right thing to do. Now, one who learns Torah, right? Maybe somebody wants to say, well, I just want to be able to say that I, made it through that whole book or through the whole Talmud. Right? But as we enter into it and we learn and learn and learn and we learn on a daily basis, these teachings have to penetrate us. They have to change us, right? We have to develop and fine-tune our sense of right and wrong, what is obligated, what is permitted, what is prohibited, what we are called on to do, what does it mean to be a mensch, what does it mean to wrestle with our evil inclination, and to elevate ourselves and to become more spiritual and cling to God and be more Torah observant, right? All of it has to penetrate us. And what's being taught here is that Doeg, who learned a lot of Torah for whatever reason, wasn't penetrated by it. It was lip service. It was not sincere. It didn't go into his heart. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? And the righteous shall see and fear and shall laugh at him, from Psalm 52, verse 8. So initially they will fear Doeg due to his success, and ultimately they will laugh when they witness his downfall. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? He has swallowed riches, and he shall vomit them again. God shall cast them out of his belly. From Job 20, verse 15. So David, now back to King David, said before the Holy One, blessed be he, master of the universe, Doeg shall die. And God said to him, he has swallowed riches, and he shall vomit them again. Meaning, he is filled with Torah and wisdom. Wait until he forgets what he has learned. David said before him, God shall cast them out of his belly. God can remove his Torah knowledge from him before he will forget it on his own. And Doeg was some kind of advisor involved with King Saul, and that made him an enemy of King David. So David sought to slay him. God told him to wait in that exchange, which was interpreted the way we just read it. Now, Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? God shall likewise destroy you forever. Psalm 52, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to David, let Doeg enter the world to come. Our Mishna says Doeg has no share in the world to come. So what's going on? So David said before him, before God, God shall likewise destroy you forever, i.e., let Doeg not have eternal life. What is the meaning of that which is written? He shall pluck you away and pluck you from your tent and root you out from the land of the living. Selah. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to David, at least let them state a law in the study hall in his name. David said before him, he shall pluck you away and pluck you from your tent, i.e., let him be completely removed from the tents of Torah. God said to him, let him have sons who are sages. David said, and root you out from the land of the living, Selah, i.e., let Doeg be entirely uprooted, right? So the sages are imagining this conversation between David and God, where one side of the conversation are the verses from Psalm 52. The other side of the conversation is God, who's, right? All humans are God's children. So even when they become so utterly wicked, God would prefer not to eschew them, right, and not bring them back to some kind of portion, even a minuscule one, in the life of the world to come. But David is saying, this guy is utterly evil. You should not let him in. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of that which is written? Where is he that counts? Where is he that weighs? Where is he that counts the towers, Migdalim? That's from Isaiah 33:18. Where is he that counts all the letters of the Torah? Where is he that weighs, who considers all the elements of a Kal V'chomer inference in the Torah? Where is he who counts the towers? This is Doeg, who would count 300 halakhic conclusions with regard to the purity of a cupboard, migdal that floats in the air, avir, right? So this is one of those sort of tropes that's known to the sages. If you're going to say that somebody is utterly expert in matters of Torah and halacha and Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral Torah, the oral tradition, you would say that he is somebody who can expound the laws of a cupboard that floats in the air, because it's amazing that they could imagine such a thing. They're not talking about, like a horse-drawn carriage, right, where the occupants ride above the ground, because, the carriage is connected through its wheels to the ground. They're talking about some kind of a box, a cupboard, that floats above the ground, suspended supernaturally. Or, if they had like a electrical magnetic system, like magnetic levitation would be the way to accomplish that, but they didn't know such a thing. It was more a hypothetical if there was a box suspended above the ground, what would be its implications of Tuma and Tahara? Right? If something was in the box, when the box came into contact with a source of ritual impurity, would this, or if the box rode over the ground, right? So if you walk over a grave, you become tameh, ritually impure. But if you're in a box that floats over the grave, did you contract ritual impurity or not? Similar question to an airplane. The point is, among the sages, these were matters of very, fine and elevated halachic discourse. And to say that Doeg knew all kinds of laws in that field of Torah and Talmud study is to say, hyperbolically, that he was extremely well versed in Torah law. That's what they're saying. So Rebbe says Doeg and Achisophel, who's another one who has no share in the world to come, raised 400 dilemmas with regard to the purity of a cupboard that floats in the air. And they did not resolve even one, which is an indication of their great knowledge because they could keep bringing questions. And Rava says, is it greatness to raise dilemmas? That is not a barometer of greatness. As in the years of Rav Yehuda, all of their Torah study was confined to the order of Nezikin. And we study much more than that, and are expert even in Tractate Okatzin, the final tractate in the difficult order of Teharos. So moreover, when Rabbi Yehuda would encounter the Mishnah in Tractate Okatzin that discusses the extent to which the stems of various fruits and vegetables are considered an integral part of the produce in terms of contracting Tuma, where the Mishnah discusses the law concerning a woman who pickles a vegetable in a pot, and some say when he would reach the Mishnah in Okatzin to one of olives pickled with their leaves that are pure, because after pickling it is no longer possible to lift the fruit by its leaves, so they are no longer considered part of the fruit. And he would find it difficult to understand, and he would say, those are the discussions between Rav and Shmuel that we see here. And we, by contrast, teach Tractate Okatzin in 13 academies. Meaning that, what are you saying that Doeg was so great and so incredibly well versed in Torah? The world has moved on, and now we're learning much, much more, right? It's sort of like the amount of knowledge and halachic material that a sage was expected to memorize grows with each generation. And so here in later generations, they had many more disputes and debates and conclusions at their fingertips than they did in these very early days, right? Before the first temple was built, when we're talking about Doeg, who lived contemporaneously with King Saul and King David. So what's going on here? Why are you saying he's so great? But nevertheless, when Rav Yehuda would remove one of his shoes, the rain would immediately fall, whereas we cry out and no one notices us. So it's not that having tremendous amounts of Torah knowledge is what makes you beloved of God. Rather, the Holy One, blessed be He, seeks the heart. And the barometer of greatness is devotion of the heart, and not the amount of Torah that one studies, as it is written, but the Lord looks on the heart. Right? If you're not penetrated to your heart by these teachings, then the fact that you could memorize entire tractates will not stand you so well. Right? If you memorize entire tractates in the name of God, and as you learn them, you're spending so much time devoted to God that you literally, emotionally come closer to God, literally in that sense, then that Torah learning will stand you well. Rav Meharshia says Doeg and Achisophel did not comprehend halachic discussions. Mar Zutra objects to this statement. These are people with regard to whom it is written, where is he that counts? Where is he that weighs? Where is he that counts the towers? In Isaiah 33:18, it refers to Doeg and Achisophel, and you say that they did not comprehend halachic discussions. Rather, Doeg and Achisophel would not conclude halachic discussions in accordance with halachic rulings. As it is written, the secret of the Lord is with those who fear him. Since they did not fear God, they did not arrive at halachic conclusions despite their keen intellect. Now, you might apply this to people who have tremendous biblical knowledge and don't follow Torah and don't submit to the halacha that our sages have derived over the centuries and millennia and has been codified in Shulchan Aruch and says that this is how a Jew is to live. So somebody has tremendous biblical and even Talmudic knowledge and is not an observant Jew. Where is the allusion to tsaras in this? Rabbi Ami says, Doeg died only when he forgot what he learned. As it is stated, he shall die for want of instruction, and in his folly he shall go astray. Proverbs 5:23. Rav Ashi says he was afflicted with tsaras before his death. As it is stated, those that go far from you shall perish. You destroy all those who go astray from you. Where is the allusion to tsaras in this verse? It is written there, and the land shall not be sold in perpetuity, litzmitut, in Leviticus 25:23, and we translate this into Aramaic as lechalutin. And we learned in a Mishna with regard to the mitzoras, people with tsaras, in Megillah 8b, the difference between a quarantined mitzora, i.e. one who was examined by a Kohen, by a priest, who found his symptoms to be inconclusive and who must therefore remain in isolation for a period of up to 2 weeks to see if conclusive symptoms will develop or not, and a confirmed mitzora, known as a muchlat, i.e. one whose symptoms were conclusive and the Kohen declared him to be a mitzora, is only with regard to letting the hair on one's head grow and rending one's garments. The derivation is based on the etymological similarity between hitzmata and litzmitut, the translation of litzmitut as lechalutin, and the etymological similarity between lechalutin and muchlat. It's a little bit above my head. I'm going to move on. The Gemara cites a mnemonic for the laws that follow. 3 saw and half and called him. Right? Mnemonic device for remembering what now. Rabbi Yochanan says, 3 angels of destruction encountered Doeg. Right? This guy was very wicked, and this was his end. He got it, every which way. One of these angels of destruction caused him to forget his Torah knowledge. One of them burned his soul, and one of them dispersed the ashes of his soul in synagogues and in study halls to be trampled beneath the feet of the righteous. Rabbi Yochanan says Doeg and Achisophel did not see one another, as both died at a young age. Doeg lived in the days of King Saul, and Achisophel lived in the days of David, toward the end of David's life. And Rabbi Yochanan says Doeg and Achisophel did not reach half of their allotted days, as they died before the age of 35, half of the standard lifetime. As mentioned in the verse, the days of your years are 70 years. That's Tefillah Moshe, prayer of Moses, Psalm 90. And this also is taught in a Baraisa. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live half their days, from Psalm 55. All the years of Doeg were only 34, and the years of Achisophel were only 33. And Rabbi Yochanan says initially David called Achisophel his teacher, and eventually he called him colleague, and ultimately he called him his student. Initially, David called Achisophel his teacher, as it is stated, but it was you, a man, my equal, my master, Alufi, and my familiar friend. Psalm 55:14. So a teacher is known as an aluf, and he trains me'alef his students. And eventually he called him his colleague, as it is stated, we took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God with the throng. Psalm 55:15. And the term together indicates that they were equals. And ultimately, David called him his student, as it is stated, even my own familiar friend in whom I trusted, who did eat of my bread, has lifted his heel against me. So what does it mean, eat of my bread? It means that he learned Torah from me. Now we're on page 107a. Apropos Achisophel, the Gemara relates the events that led to his death. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says a person should never bring himself to undergo an ordeal, as David, king of Israel, brought himself to undergo an ordeal and failed. Now we're going to talk about David and Bathsheba. And the general concept here is, don't ask to be tested by God, right? If we endure enough challenges and tests in our lives, don't ask for more. So here, it's as if looking at scripture, it seems that from David's verses in Psalms that he's asking to be tested, because why? Because he wants to be as great as Abraham, who was tested, right? Abraham had 10 ordeals that he had to go through. The last and worst and toughest of which was being asked to sacrifice his son in the story of Akeda's Yitzchak. So what's going to go on here with David? Rav Yehuda says that Rav says a person should never bring himself to undergo an ordeal, as David, king of Israel, brought himself to undergo an ordeal and he failed. David said before God, Master of the universe, for what reason does one say in prayer, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob? We say that in the Amidah, in the Shemona Esrei 3 times a day. And one does not say, God of David, right? I mean, David is so familiar, so all over our liturgy, but when we beseech God in the prayer, right, the standing prayer, the main prayer that we say 3 times a day, David is mentioned later in the prayer, but we don't beseech God initially by saying, as we say, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. We don't include David there. So why? One does not say God of David. Why, says David? So God said to David, well, they have undergone ordeals before me, and you have not undergone an ordeal before me. Now, David was on the run for his life, from King Saul, who was trying to kill him. David suffered terribly also once he became king with all the stuff that went on with his rebellious sons. It's not like David had it easy, but that's not an ordeal like this. They have undergone ordeals before me, and you have not undergone an ordeal before me. So David said before him, examine me and subject me to an ordeal. Where does David say that? As it is stated, Psalm 26, examine me, Lord, and subject me to an ordeal. Try my kidneys and my heart. God said to him, I will subject you to an ordeal, and I will perform a matter for you that I did not perform for the patriarchs. As for them, I did not inform them of the nature of the ordeal, while I am informing you that I will subject you to an ordeal. I'm going to tell you what type of ordeal you're going to undergo, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they just went through it. They weren't warned that this was going to happen to them. I'm warning you what's going to happen to you. Says God, it is going to be an ordeal involving a married woman, a matter of a married woman, with whom relations are obviously forbidden. One of the great crimes is adultery. So immediately, as it is written, 2 Samuel 11:2, and it came to pass one evening that David rose from his bed. Rav Yehuda says, once David heard the nature of his ordeal, he sought to prevent himself from experiencing lust. He saw that God was going to tempt him, right? That his ordeal was going to involve overcoming his lust. Okay, so he wants to make sure he passes the test. So what is his strategy? He transformed his nighttime bed into his daytime bed, i.e., he engaged in intercourse with his wives during the day in an attempt to quell his lust. Right? It's permitted for him to have relations with his wives. Right? He had the correct number of wives. He didn't multiply beyond the permitted numbers we've discussed before, and therefore he had an obligation. Right? He had a conjugal obligation to each of his wives, and he sought to, make sure he was fulfilling all his conjugal obligations. And if he's going to have an ordeal that's going to involve, somebody who is not his wife and who in fact is married to someone else, well, he wants to quell his lust by having a lot of sex, in a permitted manner with his wives, so that should, sate him, and he won't have lustful feelings for someone who is not permitted to him. So that was his strategy. But there's a law that escaped him. And this law, right, is something that the sages tell us. There is a small limb in man, the penis, that he employs in sexual intercourse. If he starves this limb and does not overindulge, then it is satiated. But if he satiates the limb and overindulges in sexual intercourse, then it is starving and it desires more. Right? One who constantly gives in to his lust is never satisfied. He always wants more, more extreme, stranger, kinkier, more prohibited, right? Whereas somebody who is very temperate and moderate in his sexual desires, does only what is permitted at the right times, lots of preparation for the date, so to speak, then it's satisfying, right? So somebody who becomes addicted to lust will never have enough. The verse states, quote, "And he walked upon the roof of the king's house. From the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very fair to look upon." 2 Samuel 11:2. Bathsheba was shampooing her head behind a beehive, which concealed her from sight. Satan came and appeared to David as a bird. David shot an arrow at the bird. The arrow severed the beehive. Bathsheba was exposed, and David saw her. What's Satan doing here? Right, we talked about many times. Satan is not some kind of, other force in the world that opposes God. Satan is an angel, right, whose job it is to act as the prosecutor and to accuse and to tempt and to entrap the humans and to say to God, look, your people are not so holy. So it's like in the same way that God was saying, look at my servant Job, he's so devoted to me. And then the prosecutor comes, the adversary, right, prosecutor comes and says, well, it's because he's got it made. If you took away all his wealth and family and riches and success, then let's see if he would be so devoted to you. And that's what the book of Job is all about. And similarly here, Satan said, God might have said, look at my servant David, he's so devoted to me. And was there anyone so devoted to God as David? So now the Satan says, well, let's see how devoted he is when there's something that is his particular test. So his particular test, right? David was a ruddy warrior, and therefore a lustful man, and so this was going to be the nature of his test. So he sees this woman, but he can't quite see her, but just the fact that he can kind of see a little bit of her intrigues him. Satan comes as this bird. David shoots the bird, destroys the beehive, and now she's revealed to him bathing on the rooftop. So he's seeing much more than he should be seeing of Bathsheba, who is a married woman. Immediately it is written, and David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, is not this Bathsheba, a daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her. And she came to him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her impurity, and then she returned to her house. She might not have been a nida, right? She wasn't violating that sin, a menstruating woman, but what difference does that make? Here the problem is she's a married woman. This is adultery. And that is the meaning of that which is written, you have proved my heart, you have visited me in the night, you have tried me, but you find nothing. Let no presumptuous thought pass my lips. David made this claim, right, this boast in Psalm 17. So now that he was not so pure and he succumbed to the lust, David said, that a muzzle would have fallen upon the mouth of the one who hates me, which is a euphemism for his own mouth. And I would not have said anything like that, and I would have withstood the ordeal, right? If he had not bragged that he could overcome his lust, maybe he could have. But the fact that he bragged before he was really tested, now he's regretting that. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written to the leader of David? In the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee like a bird to your mountain? From Psalm 11. So David said before the Holy One, blessed be he, Master of the universe, pardon me for that sin with Bathsheba, so that the wicked people will not say, the mountain that is among you, i.e. the luminary of the generation, who was David, he was the foremost sage of his generation, was driven from the world due to a bird that led to his transgression, right? He knows, his whole, everything in his life was dedicated to God, to elevating the nation. He wanted to be the one who built the temple. That he would not succeed in doing, but he set it up so that his son Solomon could. He wanted the throne to be utterly dedicated to God, in contrast to Saul's throne, and that's why Saul lost the throne. David, the sweet singer of Israel, wrote the book of Psalms, right? And so, I mean, he was the sage of the generation, but now he's thinking like, but now that he's succumbed, then that's what everyone will remember. And then they won't care about his Psalms, and they won't care about all the good that he has done, and he is just utterly forlorn. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written against you? Only you have I sinned and done what is evil in your eyes, that you are justified when you speak and right when you judge. Psalm 51. What does this mean? David said before the Holy One, blessed be he, it is revealed and known before you that if I sought to suppress my evil inclination, I would have suppressed it. But I said, I will sin so that they will not say that a servant overcame his master and withstood the ordeal, even though God said that he would not. Okay, I'm just not even going to comment on that. I just want to make sure we understood what he said. He's saying, well, he could have overcome their temptation and passed the ordeal, but since God said he wouldn't, he wasn't going to make God look like God was wrong. So therefore, he succumbed. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? For I am ready to stumble, Letzela, and my pain is always before me. Psalms 38:18. Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, was designated as fit for David from the 6 days of creation. Now remember, Bathsheba ends up being Solomon's mother. So of all of his wives, he chooses her and her son, right, to be the successor, that it would be her son who is going to succeed him on the throne. So it can't be that this was some kind of unholy union. David was intended to marry, he was destined to marry Bathsheba, and from her would come Solomon. So then what's the crime? If he was destined to be with her, maybe this was one of those cases where he had to set the Torah aside in order to fulfill the Torah. Is that what's going on? The problem is timing. Rava interprets that the term Letzela is referring to Eve, as in Adam and Eve, who was taken from the side, Tzela, of Adam, the first man, and explains that she was destined for him just as Eve was destined for Adam. But she came to him through pain. And likewise, the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, was designated as fit for David, but he partook of her unripe. Right? In other words, he picked the fruit before it was ripe. He took her before her husband was going to die on the battlefield anyway, and then he could have her legally, but he took her too soon because he gave in to his lust. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? And when I limped, they rejoiced and gathered. The wretched gathered themselves against me, and those whom I know not, they tore and did not cease. From Psalm 35. So David said before the Holy One, blessed be he, Master of the universe, it is revealed and known before you that if my enemies were to tear my flesh, my blood would not flow to the ground due to excessive fasting. Meaning David is doing everything he can to atone for this misdeed. David continued, moreover, my enemies torment me to the extent that at the time when they are engaged in the public study of the laws of the 4 court-imposed death penalties, they interrupt their study and they say to me, hey, David, concerning one who engages in intercourse with a married woman, his death is effected with what form of execution? Right? In other words, because he was the greatest sage in the nation, as well as a king. But when he committed this deed, right, it's like now that's how they think of him as, well, you know, Torah, great, king. But you committed adultery, so hey, David, right, in a kind of sarcastic and accusatory manner, what's the law on which court-imposed death penalty do we use when a man sleeps with a married woman, right? He's so much lowered in their eyes, right? Anytime, you know, our leaders misbehave, you know, morally, we're very quick to condemn them and forget any good that they might have done and be doing, right? So David, again, is forlorn because he's also expressing that now they won't heed my Torah, that I have so much Torah to share. So says David, and I said to them, well, concerning one who engages in intercourse with a married woman before witnesses and with forewarning, that wasn't the case, so that's why the death penalty doesn't apply to David. His death is by strangulation, and then he has a share in the world to come, right? Because, you know, there is a way to atone, and one who suffers a death penalty for his crime, well, his death atones for him, so he does have some kind of a share in the world to come. Won't be a high-class neighborhood, with the sages type of thing, but he has a place in the world to come. But, and here's David's Torah, his own zinger back to them. But one who humiliates another before the multitudes, he has no share in the world to come. The transgression of those who humiliated David is even more severe than the transgression of David himself. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says even during the time of his illness, he fulfilled the mitzvah of conjugal rights for his 18 wives. As it is stated, I am weary with groaning. I am weary with my groaning. Every night I speak in my bed. I melt away my couch with tears, from Psalm 6. Even when he was weary and groaning, he still spoke in his bed. This is a euphemism for sexual intercourse, the permitted intercourse with his wives, to whom he owes. He has a conjugal obligation. And Rav Yehuda says that Rav says David sought to engage in idol worship during the attempted coup of his son Avshalom. As it is stated, and it came to pass when David was at the top, the Rosh, right? It means head or top, of the ascent where he would bow to God, 2 Samuel 15:32. Well, Rosh in this context means nothing other than idol worship. As it is stated, as for that image, its head, Reshe, was of fine gold in Daniel 2:32. And it is written, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. 2 Samuel 15:32. What's going on? Hushai said to David, shall they say a king like you will engage in idol worship? And David said to him, is it preferable that they will say with regard to a king like me, known to be righteous, that his son will kill him? And David continued, referring to himself in the third person, it is preferable that he shall engage in idol worship, and the name of heaven shall not be desecrated in public through the murder of a righteous king in this manner. Right? This is somebody who really understands the law. David is saying, other than that affair of Bathsheba, which he atoned for, and we'll talk about that in a moment, in every other way, David was righteous. So why would he be murdered by his son? Why would his end be that he was murdered by his son? Better that he should commit some kind of idol worship and be executed for that, than to say that God would send the son of a righteous king to slay his father. Hushai said to him, no, you got this all wrong. What is the reason that you married a beautiful woman, i.e. the mother of Avshalom? David said to him, well, with regard to a beautiful woman, the merciful one permitted me to marry her. Hushai said to him, but you did not interpret the juxtaposed verses. As juxtaposed to the portion of the beautiful woman, right? This is a soldier who marries a beautiful woman in wartime and brings her home. He has to wait, let her mourn, let her nails grow, etc. And then if he still wants to marry her, he can. But then the next passage in the Torah is about the stubborn and rebellious son, who there never was one in Israel, but we learn those laws, and they are juxtaposed to the law of the beautiful captive, right? So after the law of the beautiful captive is the law of if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son, and from that juxtaposition it is derived. Anyone who marries a beautiful woman has a stubborn and rebellious son. That's a bit of a reach. It's not that any beautiful woman. I mean, the law was of the beautiful captive in wartime, but okay. Therefore, even if Absalom kills you, there will be no desecration of God's name, as the people will attribute his actions to his mother. Rabbi Dostai from Biri taught, to what is David comparable? He is comparable to a Samaritan merchant who incrementally lowers the price until the buyer agrees to purchase the merchandise. What do it mean? What does this mean? David said before the Holy One, blessed be he, Master of the universe, who can discern his errors? I.e., forgive me for the unwitting sins that I committed. God said to him, they are forgiven you. Now, this is the whole beautiful, intimate, close relationship between King David, who is a prophet, right, who speaks with God. Now, sometimes his conversation is what? It's an imagined conversation using the verses from Psalms and the sages filling in what God said to him. But we know that David and God were very close. So this is not a reach, this conversation. David said before the Holy One, blessed be he, Master of the universe, who can discern his errors? Meaning, please forgive me for the unwitting sins that I committed. And God said to him, they are forgiven for you. David then asked, cleanse me from my hidden faults, right? This is Psalm 19. We're doing Psalm 19 here, verses 13 and 14. Clean me, God, Now David says, cleanse me from my hidden faults. I.e., pardon me for transgressions that I committed in private, even if I did them intentionally. And God said to him, they are forgiven for you. And David requested, keep back your servant also from intentional sins. And God said to him, they are forgiven for you. And David requested, let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be faultless. And I further request that the sages will not speak of me and condemn me. And God said to him, these sins too are forgiven for you. And David requested, and I shall be clear from great transgression, meaning that my transgression with Bathsheba and Uriah will not be written in the Bible. And God said to him, no, that is impossible. This story will be in the Bible. And just as the letter Yud that I removed from the name of Sarai, the wife of Abraham, right? Initially they were Abram and Sarai, and they became Abraham and Sarah. So there was a Yud at the end of Sarah's initial name when it was Sarai. So when God changed her name to Sarah, he removed a Yud from her name and added a Hey, right? So that Yud was standing and screaming several years over its omission from the Bible until Joshua came. And I added the Yud to his name, right? Joshua was initially named Hoshea, and then God changed his name to Yehoshua. So the Yud that he took from Sarai was added to Joshua. Right? As we see in Numbers 13:16, and Moses called Hoshea ben Nun, Hoshea the son of Nun, and he called him Yehoshua. So the entire portion of your transgression, which is fit to be included in the Bible, all the more so, it cannot be omitted. David wanted to have that story left out of the Bible. He lost on that request. And the verse states, and I shall be clear from great transgression. David said before God, Master of the universe, pardon me for that entire sin. God said to him, your son Solomon is already destined to say, with his wisdom, can a man take fire in his lap and his garments not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? So too, one who lies with his neighbor's wife, anyone who touches her, shall not go unpunished. It shall not go unpunished. I'm going to let that go. It's just that shall not go unpunished. That's actually a line in our movie. I didn't realize I was taking it from Proverbs 6:27. Okay, it has nothing to adultery in that entire transgression with no remedy. And God said to David, accept upon yourself afflictions, and that will atone for your sins. And David accepted afflictions upon himself. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, so what was the nature of his afflictions that helped him to atone for the affair with Bathsheba? So for 6 months, David was a Mitzorah. He had tsaras, and the divine presence abandoned him, and the members of the Sanhedrin disassociated themselves from him. He was afflicted with tsaras, as it is stated, Psalm 51, purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Doesn't mention tsaras, but these are elements of the purification from tsaras. The divine presence, the Shekhinah, abandoned him, as it is stated, restore me to joy of your salvation and uphold me with a willing spirit, Psalm 51. And the members of the Sanhedrin disassociated themselves from him, as it is stated, let those who fear you turn to me, and those who have known your testimonies, Psalm 119. From where do we derive that this lasted for 6 months? It is derived, as it is written, and the days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. Now we're on page 107b. And I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Right. From where do we know that his tsaras lasted 6 months? it is derived as it is written, in the days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned for 7 years, and in Jerusalem he reigned for 33 years. That's 1 Kings 2:11. And it is written, in Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned for 33 years over all Israel and Yehudah. And those 6 months, the prophet did not tally them as part of the 40 years of David's reign. Conclude from it that they were 6 months that he was not considered king, because he was afflicted with tsuras. But this terrible affliction that he had enabled him to atone for the terrible misdeed in the affair of Bathsheba. Right? That's why our sages teach us that when we endure terrible calamities in life, it's hard to remember this while it's happening. You can't say this to people while they're enduring terrible afflictions. But it is helping us, right? It is helping us. All of us have what to atone for, and our troubles in life help us to make that atonement. David said before him after this, Master of the universe, pardon me for this sin. And God said to him, it is forgiven for you. And David requested, perform on my behalf a sign for good, so that they that hate me may see it, and they should be put to shame. Psalm 86. In other words, show me a sign in my lifetime so that everyone will know that you have forgiven me. And God said to David, in your lifetime, I will not make it known that you are forgiven, but I will make it known in the lifetime of your son, Solomon. And the Gemara explains, when Solomon built the temple and sought to bring the ark into the Holy of Holies, the gates clung together and would not be opened. And Solomon uttered 24 songs of praise, and his prayer was not answered. He said, lift up your heads, you gates, and be you lifted up, you everlasting doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. This is Psalm 24. And it is stated, lift up your heads, you gates, yea, lift them up, you everlasting doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who then is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory. Selah. Sounds like a great prayer to say when you want the doors of the temple to open so that you can deposit the Ark of the Covenant in there and dedicate the first temple, the holy temple that David dreamed of building, that Solomon finally built, and now it's going to finally be put to use on the day of its inauguration. The doors won't open. Very dramatic, because the whole nation is watching. And Solomon keeps trying to say these praises and prayers and psalms written by his father, but the doors won't open. But once Solomon said, O Lord God, turn not away the face of your anointed. Remember the good deeds of David your servant. This is 2 Chronicles 6:42. Then he was immediately answered, and the gates opened. At that moment, the faces of all David's enemies turned dark like the charred bottom of a pot. And all of the Jewish people knew that the Holy One, blessed be he, had forgiven him for that sin. And it was only by David's merit that Solomon's prayer to open the doors and dedicate the temple was finally answered. Okay. Hours late, just a couple of questions. Sharon, Mashiach has a number of unlikely antecedents. Bathsheba, Ruth the Moabite, Tamar, the ancestor of Boaz, the daughter of Lot, who gave birth to Moab with her own father. Just so. And a good lesson for all of us to not size up anybody. Don't judge a book by its cover. Try not to judge at all. Always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and see what's good in them. And certainly don't condemn people according to their families. You never know what's going on in their family and where their descendants will rise to. And finally, Yosef, there seems to be two extremes of thought concerning the evil inclination. It's too difficult to fight, so I'll give in, and it's no match for me. I'll merit it without God's help. Yeah, basically, we should very much respect the evil inclination. Respect in the sense that it is a tough enemy. We must never think that, oh yeah, I can overcome my evil inclination, in any area. It's like, well, this is what I battle with. That's easy for me. no. We shouldn't think that way, There are certain bad attributes that other people have that we don't seem to have. We should say, well, so far I've done okay with that. Please God help me to keep doing okay with that. And please God strengthen me in my battle, with the temptations that I have difficulty with. But definitely respect the adversary and always pray for assistance in overcoming the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. That's what I've got for us today. I look forward to learning with you again on Monday night. And in between, you should have a beautiful Shabbos and Hag Sameach. 7th and 8th day Passover should be uplifting. Sunday, by the way, some celebrate the Mashiach Seder. It's a special Seder, just kind of, with the Shemura matzah and wine or grape juice. And really focusing on teachings of Mashiach and when Mashiach is coming. A lot of you will be reading this chapter, the Chelek, about Olam Haba on 8th day Passover. It's a good time to be involved in this chapter. So the people who are on time with their Daf Yomi, they're already in Tractate Makos. But we timed it perfectly so that we can be reviewing our studies while we're in the midst of chapter 11 of Tractate Sanhedrin on the Mashiach day, Mashiach Seder day of 8th day Passover on Sunday. All the best. Good Shabbos. Hag Sameach.